AI on the menu today, folks. Ready for a deep dive? We're talking cybersecurity and how it might be in for a wild ride thanks to AI.
Definitely wild.
You all sent in Brendan Lugo's take on this whole thing, and, well, let's just say it's got us thinking.
Yeah, he had some thought-provoking points for sure.
He uses this whole steak versus broccoli analogy for the work we do, and I gotta say, it really resonated.
It's catchy, right, but also kind of gets to the heart of it. AI changing how we work, maybe even giving us more of the good stuff.
Yeah.
You know, the steak.
Yeah, and what Lugo's saying is cybersecurity might be facing a whole buffet of broccoli, if you get my drift.
Right, like mountains of the stuff. He even mentions his own little corner of cybersecurity. His specialty is like, what, less than 1% of the whole field?
Yeah, less than 1%. Blew my mind a little, not gonna lie.
Makes you realize just how massive cybersecurity really is.
It's huge EE. And speaking of huge, he brings up these super detailed career roadmaps, like Paul Jeremy's security certification roadmap and Henry Jiang's cybersecurity domain map version 3.0.
Oh yeah, those are intense.
To show just how much ground there is to cover in cybersecurity.
It's a sprawling field. You really get a sense of the complexity.
Right. And yet, globally, there are only about 5.5 million people working in the entire industry.
That's it.
That's it, 5.5 million. Which, when you think about how much we rely on tech, on a secure digital world, that's a tiny number.
It really is. And that complexity you mentioned, that's a big part of why it's so hard to get people up to speed. Cybersecurity isn't just about, like, knowing how to code or spot a phishing email. It's way more than that. It's this constantly changing landscape of threats, new technologies popping up all the time, and, of course, human behavior, which, let's be honest, can be pretty unpredictable. All of that makes it really hard to just, like, automate everything.
Makes you wonder, can AI even help with that? I mean, is it possible?
Well, a lot of experts, Lugo included, seem to think so. They're looking at large language models, or LLMs. You might know them better as the tech behind things like ChatGPT.
LLMs. Okay, so for those of us who, aren't quite fluent in AI jargon yet.
Sure, think of LLMs like the brains behind the operation. They're AI systems trained on mountains of data that are really good at understanding and generating human-like text.
Okay, so they can read and write like us, basically.
Yeah. But way faster, and they can analyze things on a scale we just can't. So in cybersecurity, they could be analyzing code for vulnerabilities, spotting phishing attempts in emails, even writing basic security scripts, all stuff that would take a human expert way longer.
So instead of a cybersecurity pro having to go through lines of code manually, they could hand that broccoli work to an LLM and focus on the bigger picture stuff.
Exactly, like strategizing with their team or investigating those really complex threats that need a human eye.
Okay, now we're talking. Delegating the boring stuff to the AI.
And this isn't just like some far-off sci-fi scenario either. Even the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, as it's more commonly known,
CISA, right.
They're already on it. They're exploring something like a dozen different ways to use LLMs for cybersecurity.
Wow, so even the government's taking this seriously.
They see the potential, for sure.
CISA on board with LLMs, that's got to mean something, right?
Right.
But Lugo gets into some pretty specific examples, too, of how these things could tackle those, the broccoli tasks?
Right. Not just a pie in the sky kind of thing.
Exactly. He talks about something called disastigs. And I'll admit, that sounded a bit like alphabet soup to me at first.
I get it. It's a mouthful.
But it's a perfect example, apparently, of where LLMs could really shake things up.
Totally. Okay, so disastigs stands for Defense Information Systems Agency Security Technical Implementation Guides.
Catchy.
Super catchy, right? But basically, think of them like incredibly detailed checklists for securing networks, systems, all that. We're talking thousands of these tiny rules configurations. Thousands. And they're constantly being updated. Because, the bad guys don't just stand still, right? New threats all the time.
So someone has to keep up with all that.
Someone does. And imagine, just picture it, manually checking every single one of those rules across a whole network.
Oh, my brain hurts just thinking about it.
Tedious doesn't even begin to describe it. Talk about time-consuming.
And that's where LLMs,
They swoop right in, like some super efficient assistant who never gets bored, never needs a coffee break.
Love it.
LLMs can automate so much of that grunt work. Scan systems, compare them to the latest STIGs, flag anything that's off, even suggest fixes.
No way.
Yeah. Frees up the human analysts to actually, analyze the complex stuff an LLM might miss.
Okay, that does sound kind of too good to be true, though. And Lugo's no dummy, right? He's not just all sunshine and roses about LLMs. He talks about some real challenges, too.
Oh, absolutely. He doesn't shy away from the hard parts. And honestly, one of the biggest hurdles might surprise people. It's the skills gap.
Skills gap? I thought AI was supposed to solve that.
You'd think, right. But it's kind of ironic. See, AI might automate stuff, but it also creates demand for new skills.
So knowing how to work with the AI.
Exactly. Cybersecurity pros, they're going to need to know how to work with LLMs, how to train them effectively, and this is key.
Right.
How to look at what the LLM spits out and go, hold on, is this legit?
So critical thinking is more important than ever.
More than ever. It's not about replacing humans. It's about this whole human-AI partnership thing.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Right. And that needs a different kind of cybersecurity pro. Someone who's not just good with tech, but also a sharp analytical thinker. Someone who can partner up with these AI systems.
Interesting. Now, Lugo also dropped this term, hallucinations, when he was talking about LLMs. Hallucinations. Sounds kind of creepy. What's that all about?
Yeah, good question. And honestly, it's something to keep in mind with any AI, really, especially in cybersecurity.
Okay, so break it down. What are these hallucinations?
So picture this. You've got your LLM, and it's analyzing, let's say, security logs, tons of data flying by, and it flags something. It says, hey, this looks super suspicious, red alert.
Okay, doing its job.
Right. But here's the thing. Sometimes that suspicious activity is just normal stuff, like regular network traffic, but maybe there's a pattern in there the LLM learned incorrectly. It jumps to conclusions. That's a hallucination.
So it's like it's seeing things that aren't really there.
Pretty much. And in cybersecurity, those hallucinations, those mistakes, they can be a really big deal.
High stakes.
Exactly. Even a small error can snowball into something major.
So how do you fix that? How do you make sure the LLMs aren't like seeing ghosts in the machine?
The million-dollar question. And honestly, there's no easy answer. It's got to be a multi-pronged approach, you know?
Like a multivitamin for your AI.
Something like that. First off, the data you feed these LLMs, that training data, it's got to be squeaky clean, accurate, unbiased.
Yeah.
The good stuff.
Garbage in, garbage out, right?
Exactly. But also, we got to get better at spotting those hallucinations. Maybe build in some extra checks and balances, like layers of verification, so it's not just the LLM making the final call.
So basically, make them smarter, but also more trustworthy, especially for something as important as cybersecurity.
Exactly. And that actually leads right into the third big challenge Lugo talks about. It's not enough to just have these amazing AI ideas. You got to actually make them work in the real world. And that's not always so simple.
The implementation gap. He talked about that, right? We've got the theory down, but putting it into practice.
That's the hurdle.
The implementation gap. He talks about that, right?
Yeah.
We've got the theory down, but putting it into practice.
Yeah, it's that leap, you know, from the lab to the real world. Like right now, we've got all this cool research showing LLMs can do some pretty impressive cybersecurity stuff. In the lab, at least.
Controlled environment, all that.
Exactly. But a real organization.
Yeah.
Way more messy. You got to make the LLM work with everything else, all the security tools they're already using. Right, it's got to fit in.
And honestly, you got to get the cybersecurity folks on board too. They got to trust this AI thing isn't going to like delete all their files by accident.
Trust is huge. So it's more than just, okay, drop the LLM into the cybersecurity team and watch the magic happen.
It'd be nice if it were that easy, but no. It takes planning, real thought about how AI and cybersecurity work together, and being okay with things changing, evolving as we go, which, by the way, brings up a really important point Lugo made, and I think it's something everyone listening should think about, even if you're not, like, a cybersecurity whiz.
Okay, I'm intrigued. You're saying this goes beyond just one field.
Oh, yeah, this is bigger than cybersecurity. The whole AI thing, changing how we work, that steak versus broccoli idea, that's everyone.
It's making me think about my own to-do list, that's for sure. Right. Think about it. What do you do every day that's like totally routine? The broccoli you'd happily hand off to a robot if it could do it, right?
I don't think I'd miss those tasks one bit.
And that's exactly the stuff AI is going to be good at. As it gets smarter, those tasks gone. Across all kinds of jobs.
Okay, now you're freaking me out a little, but also, like, kind of excited. So what do we do? If this AI wave is coming for all of us, how do we ride it, not get crushed by it?
And million-dollar question, part 2. Honestly, nobody knows for sure what the future holds, right? But there are things we can do now to be ready. The biggest one, never stop learning.
Love that. Always be learning.
The stuff you're an expert in today might be totally useless in 5 years. AI moves fast, so be adaptable, check out new tech, stay curious.
So it's not about being the expert, it's about being the expert learner.
Nailed it. And the other